Okay, so chapter 166 is out, and I had to read this chapter multiple times before I could finally come to terms with what actually happened by the end of it. Now, I give you forewarning right now that the rest of this video will contain heavy spoilers for Eden Zero, chapter 166, so if you have not read that chapter for yourself just yet, I definitely recommend that you go read it before you come watch this video. Now, recently, I've been normally scripting out my reviews, but for this one, I felt like that there was no need to, because what happens in this chapter, while it's so short, is something that's very clear and easy to talk about. And that is the fact that by the end of the chapter, we lose one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise, Witch. Because, as you know, at the end of the last chapter, right after Witch had made a full recovery, Ziggy took control of the Eden Zero ship and knocked out all its functions so that he could not escape the blast on Narrow 66. And in an attempt to save her family in this chapter, Witch decides to go outside the ship and use her Shield of Eden to block the blast from destroying the ship, sacrificing her life, saving the others. And honestly, even though the signs were there in the last chapter that this would end up happening, I honestly went into this chapter hoping that at the worst, Witch would be taken out of commission from whatever she was doing for the next few arcs and then make a full recovery after that. But her sacrificing herself was foreshadowed heavily in the last chapter, with the whole talk of her being the mother of Shiki and the rest of the crew in Eden Zero, and they've all grown to the point where they no longer truly need her. Which, personally, I don't see as being completely accurate just yet because of the fact that she just recently took Rebecca on as being her apprentice to turn her into a chrono witch and make her realize her full potential. And based on what we've seen of Rebecca in this last arc, she still has not fully grasped the true power of her abilities just yet. So personally, I still believe that Witch had a purpose on the ship, which made her death all the more tragic in this chapter. And honestly, as I'm recording this video, I'm even looking through the chapter again just to make sure there's not a single thing I missed, and the more I read it again, the more I've started to tear up over the fact that Witch, one of my favorite characters from the series, is now officially dead. And she's not the only death that we got in this chapter. We'll get into those deaths in a little bit, but I do want to point out that because I just came up on it on a chapter, that to hit the emotions of us readers even harder, Hiro decided to put a flashback in the middle of the chapter of back when Shiki was a baby and they had just recently found him, and how much of a liking he had taken to Witch, and the fact that she was a motherly figure to him. And we got to see that since that moment, Witch has seen Shiki as being pretty much her own son, which makes her death in this chapter even more beautiful, just because of the fact that while I do really feel sad by the fact that she died in this chapter, once again, she was one of my favorite characters from the series, her death was so full of meaning in this chapter by her realizing that her son no longer truly needs her, and this will be the final thing that she can do for him so that he can go forward and become the person that he's meant to be. And honestly, one of the tropes in anime and manga that have always hit me the hardest when it comes to feeling sadness or emotion is when we get to see a parental figure to the main character sacrifice themselves in protection of that character. Because in most series, the author is able to capture so perfectly the sadness, the emotion, the anger, the guilt that the main character feels for the fact that they were not able to save that loved one and that they had to sacrifice themselves to protect them. And this is something that we got to see Hiro capture multiple times in Fairy Tail, but it never hit harder than it did in this series, because unlike with Fairy Tail when we saw Makarov die and the entire guild cried out for him, and we got to see Urza's just sad in reaction to her father figure dying in front of her, he eventually ended up coming back to life. But when it comes to this case, Witch, as we already established with Valkyrie, more than likely would not be coming back, because even though they could rebuild her and put all her memories back in, it wouldn't be Witch. It wouldn't be the same Witch that they lost. So there's no way in the near future that we're going to be having Witch make a return, unless it's some kind of alternate timeline version of herself. Although that being said, I do have a theory that I'm actually kind of working on, and I will mention at the end of this video, as to how Witch could make a return at the very end of the series. But yeah, that's the big thing from this chapter, Witch making her sacrificial choice to save the Eden Zero crew by destroying herself in the explosion, and everyone else is just going to have to go forward with the guilt that she died to protect them. And you know this is going to hit hardest for the characters of Shiki, Rebecca, Hermit, and Sister, because those were the four characters who had the closest connection to Witch. But Witch is not the only death that we got in this chapter, because as we saw at the end of the last chapter, or not the end, but the middle of it, when we got to see the Ocean 6 members escaping the planet, Juno was not with them. And as we end up finding out in this chapter, that she actually went back to where Shura was in the facility on Narrow 66, and decided to die alongside him. Because as we find out in this chapter, even though the love she felt for him originally came from her ether gear ability tying the two of them together, now that it's been cut, she sees him and she still feels the same amount of love for him that she originally did. And we end up finding out in this chapter that apparently Shura was already aware that the reason why he had such high respect and high affection for her was due to her ability, but he was never truly in love with her. And the reason for that is because, as Ijuna mentions in the chapter, that he was never shown any true love throughout his entire life. And that is the reason why he became the monster that he was. And in their final moments, her showing him just how much she truly does love him, despite their connection being severed from her ether gear ability, does show that he had the potential to actually become a better person if someone, his father or anyone, had showed him that same amount of love and affection, which is just another instance of Hiro showing us the potential of a character to be good, only for him to kill them off moments afterwards. Now, there is a very slim chance that Shura and Ijuna could have survived that explosion, just because of the fact, and this is very, very slim, but it is very plausible that at some point throughout his life, Shura would have learned his father's ether gear ability of being able to create portals, and could have used the portal in the very last second to get the two of them out of there. Now, do I think it's likely that Shura and Ijuna would have survived it and be showing up later on as allies to Shiki and the rest of the Eden Zero crew? Probably not. If this was Fairy Tail, maybe. But with how dark Eden Zero has been so far, I highly doubt that is going to happen. Although, I personally would like to see the two of them make a return. But anyway guys, that's all that happened in chapter 166, and honestly, I'm still tearing up over the fact that Witch is officially dead. And like I said, she was one of my favorite characters, and knowing that she's no longer going to be in the series going forward, even though I'm not serious about this, it does make me kind of feel like in the moment that I don't even want to read the next chapter. But of course, I do intend to continue to read the series and continue to review it, and hopefully I won't miss any more reviews going forward. Now, some theories I had on how Witch could possibly end up coming back is basically going off of what Ziggy said a few chapters ago about Mother's connection to all things, both human, android, and the cosmos itself. And that is basically that I believe since Mother, seemingly as we saw with that image of her kind of having a baby attached to her, I kind of have this feeling that maybe Shiki could turn his wish from what it currently is, which honestly I would have to go back and check to see exactly what Shiki wants his wish for Mother to be. And he could potentially end up using his wish to bring back everyone that he's lost throughout the entire series. Because ever since Homura officially took on Valkyrie's position in the 4 Shining Stars, I've had this theory that Hiro plans on killing off each of the 3 original members that were still alive and replacing them with other members of the Eden Zero crew. With Witch, it was going to be Rebecca. With Hermit, it was going to be Wise. And then I still haven't figured out exactly whose sister is going to end up being replaced by. Most likely, I would have to say either Klein or Jin. But I still had that theory that the 3 of them, and now it's even more kind of concrete in my head that this theory is going to be accurate with Witch's death, but I still had this theory that the 3 of them are going to end up dying. And I could see Shiki in the future near the end of the series when they finally do make it to Mother, switching his wish from being, I believe his wish was originally that he wants to have 100 friends. I might be confusing that with Komi-san from the new anime that just came out, but it could be from whatever it currently is to bringing back or giving them a second chance of life the characters that he cares about the most that ended up dying. So that would be Witch, Hermit, Sister, even Valkyrie for Homura. So hopefully that's one way that Witch could make a return by the very end of the series. Now, that being said, there's a possibility that this won't end up happening. And the reason why that is actually a possibility is because of the theory that fans have that might actually be more accurate than I originally thought, of Shiki being, or of Ziggy, I mean, being a future alternate timeline version of Shiki. Because if that theory ends up being true, then one possibility is that in Ziggy's original timeline, he actually did make it to Mother, but lost everyone along the way, and pleaded with her to bring everyone back to life, but she couldn't. So instead, she sent him back in time to an alternate timeline where everyone was still alive. But anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I am going to try in the future not to miss any more chapter reviews. I've just been very busy with work and school and having to go out of town a few times this past few weeks, so yeah, sorry about that, but hopefully going forward, I shouldn't miss a video, and there should be more videos coming out in the near future every day for these next few weeks. So yeah, look forward to that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.